Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 96. And what are today's topics?
Pro-choice Trumpsters are weird. Trump wants to start World War III. I've been wondering how long it'll be before you brought Chuck and Conroy's cancellation for the sexual harassment up. Greece legalized gay marriage. Trump is in a bad election spot. Good news on climate change. And Libs and TikTok goes full Karen.
Oh boy, and of course one of these topics I have to make a bold announcement that I'm not looking forward to, but a certain big mouth forces me to go that direction. I'm not looking forward to that. But we'll get to that when the time comes. Yep. So, what do we start with first?
Pro-choice Trumpsters are weird.
Yeah, so this actually, I saw this when we covered the last episode, and I actually added on during the middle of the last episode because this was too interesting a topic to just miss out. So, I think it was on CNN. CNN covered a bunch of Trumpsters that are pro-choice. Like a pro-choice one was like, I mean, that's kind of weird. You're pro-choice, but you support Trump who got rid of Roe v. Wade and all that. And let's just say their answers were like really, really, really weird. But I'm also not surprised as well. So let's take a look at this. Play.
By a show of fingers, who would say former President Trump is at least partially responsible for Roe v. Wade being overturned by the Supreme Court?
He is, and no one. Not even partially responsible.
Huh?
No one. Come on. He is responsible, you dumbasses.
You just watched a snippet of probably one of the most baffling voter panels I think I've ever seen. So that panel features women from Pennsylvania who voted for Donald Trump in 2020, but the interesting thing is they don't agree with the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. So, based on their position there, one would think that they would not only blame Trump for Roe v. Wade being overturned, but perhaps also reconsider supporting him going forward. But they're not going to do that. Now, as you saw, none of them actually do blame Trump for overturning Roe v. Wade, but as the clip goes on, one of the women finally admits that maybe he's a little bit responsible for Roe v. Wade being overturned.
Just a little bit, guys.
So we're going to watch that, followed by MSNBC's Joy Reid's reaction.
Responsible for stacking the
So none of you would say that he's at least
Supreme
partially
Court
responsible
with far-right,
maybe just a little bit.
pro-murder justices.
Because of his Supreme Court nominations.
Now, Joy, take that.
I had to show you that because her reaction was so relatable, because there are some things that you can't rationalize or justify or try to explain away. Some things just make you go, what's going on here? And, you know, it's nice to see an actual pundit have a human reaction. But I mean, even the person there who was the closest to being correct only conceded that he's a little bit responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade, which I guess is nice of her to point out, since he did appoint the Supreme Court justices that voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. But I mean, it begs the question, if Trump's not responsible in their eyes for overturning Roe v. Wade, then who is? And their answer may surprise you. It probably won't, but nonetheless, here's what they say.
Now, they were twisting themselves into pretzels, saying that they still support President Trump, and they were blaming it in part Democrats for the reason why Roe was being overturned. Of course, Democrats who've been pushing for abortion access. Take a listen to that moment.
We nominated the people to the Supreme Court who were more conservative, but we could go back and say that Ruth Bader Ginsburg could have stepped off the Supreme Court earlier, and they could have got the liberal judge, but she didn't resign.
The Democrats are to blame, of course. Why wouldn't we assume that they would blame Democrats for this? Now, look, in some ways, sure, you can blame Democrats, right? They didn't codify Roe v. Wade into law when they had a majority in the Senate and the House. But, I mean, the logic here is so interesting because what that one lady said is objectively true, but it's the messenger who I take issue with. So she said that Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't retire, right? So if she retired, Obama would have been able to replace her, and Trump wouldn't have been able to stack the Supreme Court with justices who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. And that's true.
I mean, it would have been still 5 conservative justices if that did happen. So I don't know if I would be guaranteed that it wouldn't have happened.
But the problem is, if you're seemingly against his Supreme Court picks, why would you vote for him in the first place? Like, that's what doesn't click with me. Now, furthermore, it's ridiculous for them to pretend like Trump isn't responsible, considering the fact that he literally said multiple times that he wants credit for Roe v. Wade being overturned.
The fact we covered this too. He both wants credit and thinks it was wrong for him to do it at the same time. Remember that? He's talking both sides out of his mouth, so who cares what he thinks?
Yep.
He did the wrong thing, and that's the end of it.
That I was able to terminate Roe v. Wade after 50 years of trying. They worked for 50 years. I've never seen anything like it. They worked, and I was so honored to have done it. Well, I did something that nobody thought was possible. I got rid of Roe v. Wade. And by doing that, it put pro-lifers in a very strong negotiating position. Nobody did a job like I did, including Roe v. Wade, bringing it back to the states. What I did by killing Roe v. Wade, which everyone said was impossible.
So if Trump is admitting that he's responsible for Roe v. Wade being overturned and saying that he wants credit for it, how can they still not blame him for it? I mean, the logical assumption is that they probably haven't heard him say those things and they don't know that he wants credit for it, right? I think that's fair. So what happens then if they're told that he said those things and that he wants to take credit for Roe v. Wade being overturned? Well, let's see.
Former President Trump has said publicly that he is, quote, proud, unquote, that he, quote, terminated, unquote, Roe v. Wade. What's your reaction to that?
I don't like that comment. I think it's terrible. I like Trump, but then I do disagree with that part of
How can you even like Trump in the first place?
Yeah.
But
That's what I don't understand.
I get his religious beliefs, and I get a lot of the religious.
Trump
I
doesn't
understand
really have
a
any
lot of
religious
people's
beliefs.
religious
The embodiment
on
of the
that
7
situation.
deadly sins. Come on.
He doesn't even really have any religious beliefs. He's not like a religious fundamentalist. He just does what you guys want, though. Like, that seems a little weird to bring up.
So I'm so like torn in the middle where me personally, I don't believe it. And I can't believe he says it like that. But on the other hand, I could see how and why he would be proud of that.
Okay.
Still doesn't change that's not a good thing.
Angie, what about you?
Yeah.
Kind of gross.
Gross that he said it.
Yeah.
Why?
I can believe that he said it. But it's just gross to think that somebody can even be that disrespectful. But yeah, that's all.
Why is it disrespectful?
It's disrespectful to women.
What?
Okay. Anybody else have a different view than Helen, Lisa, and Angie when you hear that Trump said that he's proud that he terminated Roe v. Wade?
I mean, he set his mind to something and he accomplished it, so I'll give him that.
Well, I mean, he followed his dream of fucking over women like me, so even though I am a little bit salty about the fact that he took away my civil rights, I can still respect him for following through on his ambitions. Cool, I guess.
That is some hardcore
Now, the First
copium.
Lady was very clearly struggling to fight through the cognitive dissonance, but overall, once they were informed about Trump's comments, they actually did change their tune, at least a little bit, which is encouraging, even though it shouldn't be. But I mean, we're in a political climate where politicians have basically become deities and political parties have devolved into political cults. So if someone is willing to at least try to fight that tribalist instinct and challenge their own beliefs, I can appreciate that at least a little bit. So credit where it's due, right? I'm grasping here, trying to give them credit where I can find it. But that still doesn't change the fact that supporting abortion and Trump is a major contradiction. But it's not the only contradiction here, because they also self-identify as, wait for it, feminists, and they still support Donald Trump. So let's see how they square that.
Again, how can you be a feminist and
Tell me what
say
it
you
means
support
to be
Trump? It makes no sense.
A Trump voting
If you're a
feminist.
TERF, you can try.
I mean, I guess.
Remember, she's
This isn't your-
remember the TERF. Remember
Say it
that
again?
two of J.K. Rowling's buddies are TERF neo-Nazis. So
A contradiction.
Why is it?
Well, hey, someone admits it is a contradiction.
Because as we've all seen, Trump doesn't necessarily treat women as equals.
Okay.
There we go.
Kathy,
Something
why
true
is,
for once.
what does it mean to be a Trump voting feminist?
Well, that is sort of like an oxymoron. But I
It
look
is.
at
absolutely,
his generation, and in business back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s was so different. And nowadays, you know, it's turned around, you know, the Me Too movement and everything else. And I'm hoping that he's adjusting to really how to
That's
treat
some
women.
big time coping right there. He ain't gonna change.
Have you seen evidence that he's adjusting?
Not yet.
Michelle, you voted for former President Trump in 2020. What does it mean to be a Trump voting feminist?
Gosh. I guess it's my choice if I want to vote for him or not. I can agree with some of the things that he's done and said, but I also have the choice to be disgusted by some of the things that he said.
But the thing is, are the things that you're disgusted with that he's done, is that enough for you to go, you know what, I'm not going to support you ever again?
Nope. It wouldn't be.
I mean, at least they acknowledge that it's a contradiction, but we're talking about a guy who was accused of sexual harassment by more than 24 women and also found liable for rape. Until this day, he still attacks his victim on the regular. He defamed her and is still defaming her. So yes, it's quite the fucking contradiction, to say the least. But it gets even worse, because these supporters of abortion rights are also open to a national abortion ban. I'm going to repeat that because it sounds so absurd. These women who support abortion rights and disagree with the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade are open to a national abortion ban.
If all the states were at 15 weeks and it was a national 15-week ban, who would support that? Show of fingers. Every state had to be at 15 weeks.
With the stipulations, right?
Yeah, with all three stipulations, with those exceptions.
Playing devil's advocate, it's not like an abortion ban that most people would think.
Yeah.
They think abortion ban means no abortions, period. Here, it would be banned after 15 weeks, which a lot of Americans, if you told them that, hey, abortion's allowed everywhere, with exceptions, but it has to be before like 15 weeks, and that's it. I think a lot of Americans, hell, maybe even a lot of like liberals or pro-choice people might be willing to take that compromise. Like that.
I'd say I'd still go Roe versus Wade.
Like that's more like what it needs to be. But like this will be, a lot of Americans, even on the pro-choice side, would be willing to support this like compromise. So I'm not really surprised that all of them support it.
So 7 of you. Okay, 7 of you would be comfortable as long as all the states were at 15 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, what even say? So they support abortion rights while supporting Trump, but don't blame him for overturning Roe v. Wade. And even though they support abortion rights, they'd be open to a 15-week national abortion ban.
Again, like I said, they wouldn't view it as an abortion ban.
Amazing. Trying to follow their logic here is genuinely exhausting. Now, they apparently wouldn't support a national abortion ban at 6 or even 12 weeks, so that's good, but I mean, they'd still be perfectly fine with 15 weeks so long as there's exceptions. But the problem is that exceptions don't actually help people who need abortions in most instances, and this was apparent shortly after Dobbs. As the New York Times explains, those with means are traveling to states where abortion is still broadly legal or are obtaining abortion pills at home because the requirements to qualify for exceptions are too steep. Doctors and hospitals are turning away patients, saying that ambiguous laws and the threat of criminal penalties make them unwilling to test the rules. And therein lies the problem.
It's a problem that most people that like are against abortions, except for like certain exceptions, they don't understand. They think, oh, there's exceptions. They're for okay, it's all fine. They don't realize that those exceptions are so strict that like really doesn't matter, and abortion's effectively banned. Like a lot just don't realize that.
Pregnancy is not viable or threatens the life of a pregnant person. How do you legally prove that that's the case if you're a doctor? What's to stop a Republican attorney general from accusing a doctor of performing an illegal abortion, even though said abortion theoretically meets the criteria for the exception under state law?
Because these guys are against abortion, period. They don't want abortion ever, no matter what.
Remember, at least one North Carolina senator tried to introduce legislation that would have also legalized murdering women for seeking abortions.
And remember, Texas tried that too.
Yep.
These abortions strike the fear of God into doctors and forces them to play it as safe as possible, which in turn forces pregnant people to play chicken with death. So if your pregnancy is life-threatening, well, in order to make sure there's enough evidence that you're not performing a criminal abortion, we've got to wait until you get sicker. If there's a pregnancy that's non-viable, well, you might just have to deliver that anyway and watch the baby die once it's born. So that way you're not
or
charged with
potentially
murder.
the woman dies too.
Can't be too safe in these circumstances.
yeah.
So it's barbaric. It's a barbaric system, even in states with so-called exceptions. But not all exceptions are made equal. While a state like Texas, for example, may supposedly have exceptions for ectopic pregnancies, they have no exceptions whatsoever for rape and incest, meaning that the 26,000 victims of rape who were impregnated by their rapists since abortions were outlawed in Texas are all forced to have their rapist's baby. Now, I'd assume that these panelists don't actually know about that and haven't seen the stories of formerly pro-life people now acknowledging the necessity of legal abortions. But as uninformed as they may be, I refuse to believe that someone can be so uninformed that they hold this many contradictory positions.
Mike, I do, because that's Americans for you. There are a lot of Americans that are that uninformed. Like, why is it that there's so many, like, pro-choice people still identify as pro-life? Like Hunter Avalon and my dad.
Yep.
They identify as pro-life, but they're for abortion. Like, like things mean different things to people. Like, the majority of Americans identify as conservative, but then when you go on the issues, they support all liberal issues. How can you identify as a conservative, but you support liberal issues? Because they don't know what that means. They feel like they are, but in reality, they're not. Like, and that's how you get contradictions.
I refuse to believe that they don't acknowledge the inherent absurdity of them being abortion-supporting feminists who also plan to vote for Donald Trump again. Now, the reason why I say this is because it's not just that they're uninformed. That's just one piece of the puzzle. Another issue is salience, right? It's one of the many reasons why voters make so many seemingly baffling decisions. They just don't view a particular issue as important as other issues. And when it comes to these voters in particular, they just don't view abortion as a very important issue.
It's not necessarily important to me. I know it is to other women.
Yeah, like, all of you guys look as old as my mom. Most of you are probably menopausal by now. So yeah, abortion would not be an issue for you anymore. Even my mom says she's not as mad about Roe v. Wade. Plus, we're in Maryland, so abortion's still legal. But she admits she's not as mad as, like, I would be, since she already goes for menopause, so she don't have to worry about an abortion. Which is funny, since how I'm very angry about it, and I'm a fucking man. I'm never going to get an abortion in my life.
I think people should have their own right to choose what they want to do with their bodies, but I mean, it's not a number one factor on who I'm going to vote for either way.
Okay, got it.
I hate to say, I know I'm a woman and I should have more of a say about it, but honestly, it doesn't matter that much to me as it might matter to someone else.
Yeah, and here's another thing too, is prioritization. Some things are more important to others. Like all these women, yeah, they're pro-choice, they claim, and they're against Trump doing it, but they're voting for Trump still. Because there's something Trump's doing that they think is more important. Like, all of them admit, because they're going to say it later on, because like, when I stopped here, pretty much all the women here said that they don't prioritize abortion as much as other things. And that's why they're voting for Trump more, because whatever he supports in their eyes is more important than abortion. Like, even me. Like, I'm liberal, like, on immigration, like, gun control and all that, but that's not my biggest priority. Abortion, even though it doesn't apply to me at all, that is a very important issue to me. The Russo-Ukraine war is such an important issue that it can actually swing my vote to not vote for Cornell, and a big announcement I'll get to later on that. Like, some things matter so much to people.
It's not one of my top issues.
Okay.
Like I said, every one of them, they say abortion is not their biggest issue.
Unfortunately, it falls like number 5. Like what I'm concerned about, it's like, it's number 5.
Got it.
I'm sure if these women were around our age, they probably would flip.
High concerns.
Yeah.
Olivia?
I'm not kidding, guys. All these women here are like, all of them look
it is important, but
older than me, older than you. They look about my mom's age.
Important. I hate to say it, but it's overall, it's probably not going to determine who I vote for.
It's like mid-range. I don't know how to explain. It's not something that's on my radar right. Not.
If you care much, if like abortion rights are your like number one issue, you vote for Democrats. Like, that's not even an argument.
Not that it's not on my radar.
You never vote for Republicans. They're always against
I
it.
need
Period.
to worry about right now, except for, like having an abortion is not something I need to worry about right now personally, but I'm not sure that it would be a deal breaker on like who I vote for.
It means nothing in the grand scheme of everything to me. I'm going to vote for who I think is going to do the best for my family.
Okay, and abortion's not part of that consideration?
At this point, no.
And that right there explains why these voters can hold so many contradictory political positions.
I mean, it's not a surprising thing because there are a lot of single issue voters or things that they prioritize more. So it's not really like a conservative thing or anything like that. It's just common things,
right?
Even I'm
you
almost
can
one of
be
those.
an abortion supporting feminist and support Donald Trump if you don't care that much about abortion and feminism, right? You can be an environmentalist but not care as much about the environment as you do about other issues. Maybe you identify as an environmentalist, but it's issue 9 out of 10 of your most prioritized policies. That's how people are able to rationalize these types of decisions. And that mentality right there, by the way, explains how many Americans vote. Well, it doesn't affect
that's
me,
the
or at
majority
least
of
it hasn't
Americans,
yet,
even me.
so I don't care. Look, Americans, for better or worse, are very selfish people, and we vote based on
people are
our
when it comes to, like,
selfishness,
elections
right?
and
We
all
tend
that,
to not
usually.
give a shit about
Yeah.
things unless
Most
it affects
people
us
only vote
personally.
for stuff that
you
matters
might
to
not care
them.
about gay rights until you find out that your daughter is gay. You might not care about paternity leave until you have a kid yourself. You might not care about Medicare for...
Or like another thing that I prioritize a lot about, Social Security. Like you're probably thinking, wait a minute, you're a 30-year-old that doesn't work. Why does Social Security matter to you? Well, a big chunk of my family's income comes from my mom's Social Security. So that's a lifeline for my entire family, and therefore, even though it doesn't apply to me, it's a big important issue for me. So, yeah.
For all until you have a medical emergency and you're bogged down by medical debt. And for purposes of this conversation, you might not care about abortion until you or your daughter or your sister needs one as well. Now, to be fair to these panelists, it's not just them.
It matters to me, even though, like I said, I'm a man. I'll never have an abortion in my life. I'm in Maryland. We still have abortion. It still matters a lot to me and all that.
It's not a Trump voter problem. It's an American voter problem. If you want to say that this is a problem,
I would say it's
because
just
we're
a
all
problem with people in
self-interested, right?
general.
But I mean,
Although
do
is
this
it
too. For
necessarily
example-
really a problem that people prioritize certain things over another? I don't know about that.
Example, exit polls from the Democratic Party primary in 2020 indicated that most voters agreed more with Bernie Sanders on policies like Medicare for all, yet they still voted overwhelmingly for Joe Biden, a candidate who's not just against Medicare for all, but downright hostile towards it and said that he would veto it if it came to his desk. So how do you explain them voting for the person who they seemingly disagreed with more? Well, even though they support Medicare for all, it wasn't as salient to them as electability. And since networks like CNN and MSNBC pushed this idea that Biden was more electable than Bernie and the most electable candidate, well, they chose to vote for Biden, even though they didn't necessarily agree with him on...
And that was also incorrect, too. All the polls show that Bernie did better against Trump than Biden. So, no, it was Bernie that was the more electable candidate, not Biden.
Yep, it was.
And that, as I said before, we need to bash this into the head of idiot liberals that need to realize this. They are wrong. That's the end of it. And you go, okay, support Bernie.
policy positions because beating Trump was their number one priority.
If beating Trump was your number one priority, you vote for Bernie. End of discussion.
It wasn't necessarily a policy, but it was a priority. It was more salient to them. So voters make a lot of irrational, contradictory, and downright dumb decisions that often results in them literally voting against their own self-interests. And, you know, we can usually chalk that up to a lack of information or them being misinformed, but it's also a matter of issue salience as well. And it doesn't help that we live in a majoritarian electoral system with just two viable options every election, so not many choices. But having said that, when the stakes are so high and when so many Americans say that they're dissatisfied with the political predicament that we're in, I think that being uninformed isn't a good excuse. If you're mad at the system and mad about the situation that you find yourself in, I think you have a duty to educate yourself and actually research the positions of politicians that you're voting for. And I get that we're all overworked and tired, and a lot of Americans don't necessarily have the time to scrutinize every single politician that they're voting for, let alone their own belief systems, right? But if you're as confused as these voters are, and you acknowledge that there's a lot of contradictory beliefs that you have, I don't know, I think that if you're not willing to be at least a little bit introspective, then you're kind of a dumbass, right? I don't know what else to say. We're all thinking it, but yeah, I think it makes you a dumbass if you know that your beliefs are inconsistent, but yet you still won't rethink them. That's on you. And at some point, you've got to take responsibility. At some point, these voters have got to own the decisions that they make at the ballot box. And, you know, they can't keep complaining if they keep voting for politicians that fuck them over, because you got what you voted for.
And to them, that was more important. And like me, for example, like on the issues, if who I would vote for president would probably be Cornel West. On like all the issues, I agree with him. However, there's that one issue, the Russo-Ukraine war, which is he is so fundamentally wrong on that can keep me from voting for him. That one issue, because to me that is so important you can't ever get wrong on. If it was anything else, I probably would overlook it. But that thing is so vital that you just can't be wrong on it. You have to be on the right issue, period. And if you're not, then you're not going to get my vote, pretty much. So yeah, like I said, prioritize other things. So yeah, we have to say about that. These pro-choice women supporting Trump.
They're walking contradictions, but I'm not surprised.
I mean, what was it for you? Like, do you have issues that you prioritize more over other things?
Yeah, I do.
And what's that?
For me, at least, in part of the big climate change, and also, there's a few other things as well. I can't not get into mind, but it's usually but it's pretty much why, since I've got the preferential voting system in Australia, it means that I can put the Greens and whatever teal independent candidates ahead of Labor.
Making me jealous.
Well, we've actually it's extra jealous in that we actually have a functioning Senate that's nudged some Labor policies leftward.
I thought that got rid of that or something recently. Remember you and Harry had that debate about it before?
No, it's still here. It's still here, and things are actually getting a little better.
Well,
as I said, a little better.
Well, good for you. You make me jealous as always. All right, so now on to the next topic.
That'll be the Trump wanting to start World War III.
Oh boy, this was like literally the day after we did the last episode and all that. So of course, Trump had to open his big fat mouth as always, and he said something that was unbelievably stupid, even for him. So of course, Trump. This all resolves around to the Russo-Ukraine war, and like Trump before, he is like an isolationist. Well, not really, because he bombed other countries during his presidency, so he's not. But he's not being smart about this, and he said before, he wants to leave NATO, which he can't. They even have Congress even passed a law recently that president cannot just unilaterally leave NATO if they want to. But I don't think he would be able to, even if he was gotten power or anything. He can't just do that. But it goes even beyond that. He said something that was so unbelievably stupid. I'm not looking forward to this one.
Let's
Here we go.
Get into
and hey,
the
Dylan
NATO
Burns.
Story. Because this thing, quite frankly,
remember,
is terrifying.
Dylan Burns is a masochist.
And when this was said, I looked at the New York Times. The top 3 stories were
and
about
he keeps
how
torturing
Biden's old.
himself with his son.
And the fourth one was this statement.
If it wasn't for his video being like 3 hours long, I might have considered adding it as a topic, but I don't feel like dealing with his stupidity for that
about
long.
What he said. Now, this story that he's telling, this is not the first time that this has been public knowledge. In fact, in the months preceding this, there had been some leaks and some stuff put to the press talking about how Trump had said in private conversations with NATO officials and different government officials from different NATO countries that they would not, the United States would not come to their defense if they didn't pay the 2% threshold. So this isn't a completely new statement, but now he's made the statement more extreme. Now it seems we're being let in on even more information that he could have said in this private meeting, and it's not good. And with this being said in public, we're going to talk about the dangers of this and how stuff like this could genuinely lead to war, whether or not you intentioned it. That was the intention.
I find it funny how he shits on Biden saying he's going to start World War III when in reality what Trump wants actually would start it.
They asked me that question.
Yeah. Right.
The presidents of
Absolutely.
So if I'm correct, here's the quote that he said that was very stupid.
Big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay.
Ugh. So if you all don't understand what he's saying, as Trump for like the last few years has been bugging European countries and NATO to increase spending to 2% of their military, which is a requirement to do NATO, but a lot of European countries don't do that. But some have been doing that more recently, especially because of the Russia-Ukraine war and all that. But Trump said here, and he's hinted it before, hypothetically, he said, if a NATO country was attacked by Russia, and if they didn't spend 2% requirements, not only would he not help them or give them aid or join the war and all that, he would actively encourage Russia to attack them.
Yep, I remember that.
Oh my God. Look, I'm still not necessarily the biggest fan of NATO and all that. Ugh. But
there's certainly reforms that need to be made.
Yes. But put aside that, you can't just say this. Like, it's unbelievably irresponsible what he said. Yeah. That actively could encourage World War III. Like, imagine if he won. And what if Putin thinks, he says this, maybe some of these countries in the Baltics aren't 2%. Maybe I could take a chance and try going at it and hope that Trump does not do anything? Whereas if Biden's in, because Biden would never say anything this stupid, he's been fervently clear about it's World War III and all that. If you do anything to NATO and all that, that scares Putin away. And that would eventually also occur, especially since Russia's doing so bad against Ukraine, to keep China away from doing anything in Taiwan. So if you really care about like preventing World War III, you have to do what Biden's doing. If you attack any country NATO, then you're dealing with all of us. That's how you get stability and peace and preventing World War III. Same goes with China. If you do anything to Taiwan, you're dealing with us. So therefore, peaceful stability, because they're too afraid to fight us, because they know they're going to lose if they fight America. That's what you say if you really care about stability and peace and all that. And, oh, God.
Yep.
Oh, God. I'm not looking... I saw this video, I think it was like the day after we did the last episode. I was not looking forward to this for the last 2 weeks. So, here is my bold claim now. Because of what Trump said, I am going to vote for Biden in the election this year. I don't want to do it. I'm in a deep blue state. Biden's going to win no matter what. And he's a piece of shit. I agree with that. And I'm not going to blame people if you don't want to vote for him at all in the progressive, like Vaj and other idiots will. I'm not going to call you fascist or anything like that. You do you. But I'm going to vote for him because, like I said earlier, the Russo-Ukraine war, as I've been saying for like a year now, it's the one issue that, depending on the circumstances, I could vote for Biden on it because he is, I think, pretty much good on the issue and all that. So, since I prioritize that so much, and because of what Trump said, I'm going to have to vote for him. Because we can't have this fascist dipshit go in there with his big fat mouth to possibly cause World War III because he's a fucking idiot. So, yeah, because of Trump's big mouth, I'm voting for the senile old man that is Biden. I'm not looking forward to it. I remember when I first saw it, I was like, now he's pushed me too far. Like, knew that instantly. And I've been begrudging deal with it ever since. So, yeah. Thank you, Trump, for making me have to vote for the senile old man that I really don't want to vote for. Especially since he's helping Israel do a genocide to the Palestinians. So, thank you for that. I really appreciate you making me forced to do this. But you just had to open your big mouth. If you didn't say that, I might not have voted for him, but you just went too far in an issue that cares very much to me.
Pay your bills.
Man, that was not fun to mention.
So,
well, if it's not going to be fun, it's about to get worse because we know what the third topic is. When neurodivergence and the lack of sex education collide,
it's right for
you get someone like Jugger Conroy.
That's the one thing that I'll say is true.
So yeah, we got
how long. I've been wondering for how long. I'm wondering when this would come up in this show because
we're gonna get to it probably next.
It is not something I've been looking forward to talking about.
Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, what do you guys say about my bold announcements?
I perfectly understand it.
I even told you that too. I thought you were going to be like stunned, but you were going to understand completely.
Yep.
I thought you were going to be like a little bit more stunned, or like, whoa, and stuff like that. But you know why.
Yeah.
If a scenario like that was to play out, not including them in NATO, or kicking them out of NATO, or us abandoning NATO, whatever the scenario would be, for us to not respect our security commitments to a country not paying the 2% threshold, this could lead to a breakdown of the alliance when you realize like half the countries are not paying the 2% threshold.
Which they really should, especially since it's a requirement.
1.8%.
I mean, 2% is not that expensive for your GDP.
As long as they're not at 2%, they're fair game. Okay, secondly, and this is going to be the main topic of discussion for me.
And I'm pretty sure I already mentioned it.
Outside of the scenarios I could run through and how this could be dangerous, like let's say, for example, Estonia goes through an economic crisis. Let's say there was some industrial sabotage or whatever it was, and it could no longer maintain the 2% threshold, so it had to go down to 1.9, 1.7, something like that. And now, since they're not meeting that threshold,
and Trump would be that petty,
Russians or somebody else believes that they're going to go away, and maybe they do.
Yep.
And then Donald Trump says, screw them. I don't want to run through all these different scenarios and how having a rule like this could terribly, terribly backfire, how it undermines the security of the alliance. And if you only included the people who are at the 2% threshold, you're going to lose a lot of alliance members and a lot of global GDP as being part of your alliance structure.
Looked it up now.
Not to mention all of the defense companies that are in those. Point is, you're going to be fracturing the alliance a lot. But before going on any of these tangents anymore, I want to focus on the main thing. The uncertainty this creates could very easily lead to war. If Donald Trump was elected and he continued with this mindset and he pursued this mindset legitimately, this could easily lead to war. Because the Russians would come to the conclusion that if the United States is not willing to defend Europe, even though combined with Europe and the United States, that's 45% of global GDP, they're our #1 export market.
Hell, I think even Europe on its own could probably beat Russia, but that's not still something I want to potentially allow. I want the firmness that will hopefully scare them away from doing anything.
Transatlantic alliance has held strong since the end of World War II. If we're not willing to defend them because of a few 0.2, 0.3, 0.5 percentage points of GDP spending, then we're not that committed to the Europeans. We're not that committed to Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, or whatever these countries that he would not come to the defense of would be in this scenario. And if we're not committed to those countries, or we're really committed to the alliance as a whole, and the Russians are going to then start questioning our security priorities with public statements like this.
And China with Taiwan, which is something else we want to avoid.
A Trump administration, are they committed to Europe's defense
as well?
Are
Azerbaijan
they?
with Armenia,
Now, if they
etc.,
aren't,
etc.,
well,
etc.
Although none of them we're allied with, whereas we are with Taiwan and NATO.
Europe's going to be a little bit up shit creek without a paddle here, as they're rushing to industrialize and get their military production up to snuff, as they're trying to hit, I think it was 1.5 million shells a year by 2025, in order to try to help maintain the Ukrainian artillery effort. Not only will they be up shit creek, but we'll be up shit creek if anything goes bad.
I just finally loaded up. So of the 31 NATO members, 18 of them are paying 2% of their GDP on military spending.
Oh.
So slightly over half. So yeah, I wonder if I can find a map of the 13 that aren't and all that.
In Europe, considering not only the percentage of global GDP, but all of the trade we've done with each other, not only them being our only, not our only export market, but our main export market, our #1 export market, but we also have a lot of other economic, geopolitical, and just societal interdependence as well. Structural interdependence.
That's old.
Now, in that scenario, let's say that Trump doing this, and this is what I've been told by Trump supporters, this is the defense.
All right, well, before we get back to it, I found one thing from Bloomberg, a picture, and this is from 2022, so I'm sure it's radically changed. But the country that are 2% all of them are. I mean, the Baltics are 2% or more. So, like, the only one's not on that's on Russia's board that's not 2% is Norway. But it's also such a small border, and Russia doesn't have any like historical claims in Norway, so I guess they'd be okay right there. And Poland too. Poland's way more than 2% now after what they've done recently. But yeah,
absolutely it would be.
But yeah, even so, what he said was so irresponsible that you just don't say that. Period.
If this is the defense, by the way, I'm done. If this is the only defense that they can give, I'm done trying to entertain these schmucks on this issue. I'm not gonna make any follow-up videos, because if this is the bottom of the barrel of Trump intellectual thought, then I don't wish to pursue it any further. The defense is, well, Donald Trump is actually not wanting to abandon the NATO alliance. He just wants to get them to spend more. Whether or not that's the purpose, and it is a good thing to want them to spend more in their own defense,
it's still stupid.
It would help us.
Exactly, yes.
It's irresponsible.
If the Russians see these statements being said publicly, is that the message they're receiving?
Not to mention stupid.
In fact, this can make an even more dangerous situation. Because let's say that the Russians move their chess pieces forward and they confront NATO, and America moves their chess pieces back. They get out of there. We skedaddle. At least we're away from a war. As everything goes down, we'll be not isolated from the economic effects, from the geopolitical effects, but our boys in uniform won't be dying. So you can at least see some positive here, even though the downstream effects will be much, much worse. But on the other end of the spectrum, let's say this is just a tactic by Donald Trump to try to get more spending out of NATO. That doesn't mean the Russians will read it that way. Donald Trump is not extremely transparent when it comes to his geopolitical goals. I mean, if there's anybody that's...
Because he, like Biden's also a senile old man.
In the modern age, I mean...
They're both senile old men being kept alive by the dark side of the Force.
At least in being perceived as a madman. If they determine that the United States is not committed to Europe, but we are, because other people around Trump come to him and say, hey, we are dedicated to Europe, we have to do this for X, Y, and Z reason, and he either says, okay, I agree with you, or we have that law that was passed in Congress come into effect that says the president can't withdraw us from NATO, so they're going to try to push for the president to come to his defense. If we come to their defense while the Russians probe, then you have a security crisis. Then you have the Russians pushing forward, thinking we're not dedicated to European defense because we've whittled down our credibility after strangling aid to Ukraine. If we're fucking up a war where the Russians faceplant again and again and again, lose like 40% of their artillery fleet.
Oh yeah, guys, because tomorrow, because this is the case for you too, would be the second anniversary of the Russo-Ukrainian war, because it is for you. One more day for me. And although technically like 5 more hours, because it was at 10 at night when they did it. I figured maybe we should bring up the most recent stuff. So, of course, Russia took over Avdiivka, which is a fortification city that Ukraine had. Now, I think it's a partial withdrawal that Ukraine had, so I don't even think Russia has the entire thing. But regardless, even if they did take over completely, just like Bakhmut last year, it's still very, very small territory gains. Like, you would probably not even really notice it on a map, pretty much. And more importantly, not only is it very little territory, Russia lost even more devastatingly losses than with Bakhmut. Like, oh my god, I think I saw reports since, because they started this offensive back in October, I think they lost somewhere between, they had like 30,000 to 50,000 casualties just in this one area. And I think they lost up to like maybe 3,000 tanks. And
that's a lot of
tanks. Remember I think we covered before, like a month or so ago, that Ukraine destroyed like 20% of Russia's Black Sea fleet. Now it's up to
another one went down.
Now it's up to a third.
Yeah.
So I would say to people, Russia isn't winning. If they're winning, it's a Pyrrhic victory or whatever it's called, where they won, but the losses are so bad that it's effectively a loss still. Like Russia, and like people keep bringing up, Ukraine doesn't have enough men. They don't have enough weapons and all that. Well, the weapons. Thank you, Republicans, for blocking Ukraine aid for so long. That you're the reason why. But guess what, guys? Yep. Russia also faces the same problems too. Like no one brings this up ever. No. They always bring up Ukraine's problems, but never Russia. Russia's facing the exact same problems. I don't know why people can't just bring it up, unless they're propagandists and all that. So yeah, the war is still a stalemate. And Russia is not winning. So don't believe the bullshit. and we must give aid to Ukraine so they can win. And, as we covered last time, remember when Republicans voted against their own immigration bill that gave them pretty much everything they want and they still said no? I think the Democrats recently are trying to do aid bill instead, separate from that, where it gives aid to Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel, but without them trying to stop with the immigration bill. So, despite giving aid to Israel, hopefully it passes still so Ukraine can get what they needed. So, thank you, fascist Republicans, for blocking aid for like several months. Maybe, just maybe, Ukraine could have held Avdiivka longer or make it even more deadly for Russia, but of course that requires you to be smart, which you're not.
Lose like 30% of their tank fleet, lose tons of armor, 300 to 400,000 men dead and injured, unable to achieve any of the goals they set before the war. And we just abandoned that after saying we wouldn't. That's going to have a hit on our credibility, but stuff like this will have a further hit of our credibility. Not only are we not dedicated to Ukraine, are we even dedicated to NATO? And after those two hits to credibility in this region specifically, I mean, people talk about if we don't help Ukraine, how that'll hurt our defense and our credibility of helping Taiwan. But by keeping it in the region, it'll be even worse, the hit to the credibility. How would Trump, of all people with no real foreign policy knowledge, no geopolitical grounding, he isn't an IR theorist, he isn't a diplomat, he just winged it his last presidency. How is he going to manage that situation? How is he going to restore credibility? So when the Russians say, we're going into Estonia to protect the Russian speakers in eastern Estonia, which there's a large population of, and this is not only true with Estonia, this is true with Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and they just grab some land and they probe Europe's defenses. That is where we can get a real security crisis, where our credibility has been smashed. Trump has said statements that has led them to believe that they could cross what had previously been a red line. They crossed that red line, war. Now, some people might say, that's a, Dylan, that's a long series of events. How do we know this type of stuff actually happens? I mean, it's just words at the end of the day. Trump's always been bad with words. A great example of this would be, now there is some dispute about how much this actually contributed to the Korean War, but one of the examples that has historically been used, and I've used it on the channel before, Dean Acheson's speech about the security situation in Asia after the start of the Cold War. He included a bunch of different countries in our defense policy. Japan, we included the Philippines, Taiwan, all these different countries. But we didn't really say that much about South Korea. And so the story goes, even though many historians dispute how much this contributed, if it contributed at all, that the North Koreans and Stalin and the Chinese saw that Dean Acheson, the American official, the American Secretary of State at the time, didn't include South Korea in that defense speech. Therefore, it's not an American security priority. Therefore, they can cross the line. It's not hard to see how a nation state could misinterpret the intentions of another state or the interests of another state, or how dedicated they are, how credible their deterrence threat in a region is, based upon government public statements, this would become a government public statement if he said it while serving as president of the United States. So, whether or not you think backing off here is even the right move, this could lead to a war. Even if the plan is to withdraw from Europe slowly over time and to make an isolationist America, I think it's a terrible idea. This wouldn't even be the way to do it. This is how you start a war. This is how you encourage the Russians to start wars with their allies. Allies we economically and geopolitically depend upon. Article 5 has only been called one time, and that was after 9/11, when all these countries went with us into Afghanistan to fight Al-Qaeda. And many of them went with us into Iraq too. Even Ukraine, even though they weren't part of NATO. 18 of their soldiers died in Iraq with us, gallivanting in the Middle East. This is probably the worst, if not one of the worst statements Trump has put out about foreign policy. And if he was to implement this, it would be catastrophic. Catastrophic. But for him to even suggest this has already done an amount of damage if he gets elected, even if he was trying to retract said policy. that it could lead to provocations, that it could lead to probing, and that it could lead to the Russians trying to take advantage of what they see as weakness. And hey, they already have their war machine mobilized. And Putin's at the end of his rope. He's getting up there in age. If there was ever a moment, it seems like the stars are aligning. West backs off of Ukraine. America looks like they're backing off of Europe. Russia's war machine mobilized. President of the United States saying, go ahead, do it, go, whatever. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic to say that Trump's mouth can actually get a lot of people killed.
It would be unbelievably stupid, though, if Putin even tried it, though. He would lose so badly, because Europe, like, you can't even beat Ukraine. You're going to get obliterated if you fight the rest of Europe. That's not even a debate. And then when you get America involved, good luck. Like, you're not going to win. Yeah. Like, that would be the only saving grace that maybe Putin would have a little bit of a brain and realize, man, even if America didn't get involved, we could probably still lose. That's all they can hope for.
And in fact, it's so bad that even the usually servile GOP is pushing back a little bit on Trump saying this. And when I say a little bit, I do mean a little bit, because there are still people trying to toe the line saying, oh no, Trump was joking. Oh no, he was exaggerating. Let me read a little bit of this for you. Former President Trump's remarks about encouraging aggression towards delinquent NATO members are shining a light on divisions among Republicans looking to safeguard America's commitments abroad and those backing the frontrunner for the GOP presidential nomination. Some Republicans have downplayed Trump's remarks, which alarm NATO's chief and member states, already raising concerns that a second Trump administration would seek to weaken the alliance. It's all sarcasm, said Tommy Tuberville. By the way, Tommy Tuberville watched a Tucker Carlson interview, and his walk away from it was that the Russians...
Oh, God, that Tucker Carlson interview of Putin. Oh, my God, that was so embarrassing. Did you see that? Oh, God. What a joke that was.
I saw pieces of that, and the simping afterwards. Oh, my fucking God.
Oh, my God. Tucker Carlson, you're pathetic. So I wouldn't say, but we already knew that.
He has always been pathetic. I don't think he has a
finger on the...
And I swear, even when you talk to Putin, he still kept making that stupid face he always does when people talk. Oh my God.
Pulse of the war. He said of Trump's comment that he would encourage Russia to do whatever they want with NATO members who are delinquent and offering financial support to NATO. I love it. It's all, he was just joking. He was just joking. I mean, there's other reports from anonymous European officials saying he said exactly that in the meeting, but no, it was totally sarcasm. It's not like it was reported in Politico and other sources just a few months ago. It's all about paying the price. Most of them haven't done that, Tuberville added. Now, again, let's say the Greeks face an economic crisis, can't spend 2%. Is that now a weak point?
Which is hilarious to bring that up, because I'm actually looking at the NATO percentage. I think this is recent. And of course, remember, Greece had their complete economic collapse in 2008, which I'm sure they probably still face the effects all these years later. Greece spends 3% of on military spending.
Yeah.
They spend almost as much as America, for crying out loud. And that's with the massive economic collapse they had, for crying out loud. Insane.
NATO's alliance structure. Even if you want them to pay the price.
Although, if Greece fell in that regard, the Russia would not be the concern, because when has Russia done anything to Greece?
It'd be Turkey.
Yep, it would be Turkey that would be the main threat.
Or should I say the Neo-Ottoman Empire?
Turkey, according to this list, is only 1.3% of the budget.
Oh.
Greece paying more than Turkey for the win.
Price. This reduces our credibility of our.
I guess he's just focused on converting Turkey internally into the Neo-Ottoman Empire.
Since NATO was founded in 1949.
Ramps up military spending and starts trying to expand.
Even if Donald Trump doesn't win this next election, by him just saying this as a nominee for president is going to somewhat degrade our credibility.
As long as he doesn't win, of course, then it shouldn't matter.
There's some desire and or political opportunities or candidates in the United States that are within arm's reach of the ultimate office in the country who are willing to abandon NATO, or at least publicly say that. And if that's the case, if you're Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, or any of these countries that are...
And find out, according to this list, Poland has the most military spend. They're spending almost 4%.
Dependent upon
that's more than America, even
themselves into short offenses amongst a much larger foe, you're going to be pretty concerned. You're going to be pretty worried. Because, hey, maybe you survived a Trump presidency last time, and maybe you'll survive it, you know, a little. Maybe you'll survive it, maybe you won't. But that maybe you won't is really, really risky.
Whereas, you know,
Trump
most likely where you won't get attacked? If Old Man Senile Joe is in. Which is why I'm going to be voting for him, even though it really is not going to make it that fast.
Gets elected.
I'm not looking forward to that.
At least I'm in Australia, so I don't have to vote for him. Unfortunately, American politics affects Australian politics.
America has ditched Ukraine. What does Europe do now? The Europeans are asking these questions. The Europeans are thinking about a future where the Ukrainians have to be supported by them, and they have to defend themselves with no assistance from the United States, irrespective of whether it is within the United States' interests or not, due to us entering a period of decision atrophy and isolationism. Trump, through reeling in our defense policy, that's how people might view this, especially from the isolationist side, he can create a power vacuum and a lack of deterrent effect that could lead to war. And I can't wait to see all those people who are very concerned about the possibility of a Russian nuclear threat over them losing really hardcore are now obviously concerned about Trump's statements about Russia being able to do whatever the hell they want if NATO doesn't pay, or certain NATO member states don't pay their fair share. I'm sure they'll all come out and release statements.
And of course, New Poland's president or prime minister actually ripped Republicans' assholes recently too, and they were very triggered by it. So good on Poland, I guess, for once. I don't even know how it didn't go over to the other video and all that. But yeah, what do you gotta say about that? Trump's stupid fucking fascist mouth is forcing me to vote for Senile Joe, and I am not looking forward to that, people.
It's very annoying. It's very, very annoying.
Be lucky that you don't have to make that disgusting vote.
Yeah, we've got the preferential voting system, so I can put the Greens at the top.
Oh my God, I am not looking forward to November to write him in. I am gonna be so angry, but it has to be done because despite how bad senile old man Joe is, he's not gonna say something stupid like this. He's been very good on the Russo-Ukraine war, much to idiots who say otherwise in the polls, apparently. Even 2 years in, majority of Americans still think he's doing bad on, which they're wrong. He's got to win, and he's got to be in to make sure we help Ukraine win this, because we cannot let Russia win at all costs. That is not acceptable, and cannot have fascist World War III starting pieces of shit like Trump in at all costs. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to dealing with idiots like Vosh brow bashing me, even though I'm going to do what he wants, because I'm not going to force others to do it. Fucking idiots. All right, so now what's up to next?
Chugga Conroy, when neurodivergence and a lack of sex education.
So now we have another sexual harassment allegation now. And this time, it's Chugga Conroy, a YouTuber, a video game YouTuber that we both watch and all that. Boy, how funny too, because I heard about this while I was watching his Pikmin meltdowns from years ago. That was cringe. So, Chugga Conroy is, like I said, an awesome YouTuber who is being accused of sexual harassment and all that. And I wish I should have saved... What?
So, you do a bit more explaining, because there's a few things I want to mention, because I've actually heard quite a bit about this.
Well, maybe you should say more, because I don't have, like, the stuff on me.
Okay, so it started out with another YouTube, but it started on Reddit. By the way, I don't know what it's like on Reddit. I'm 90% sure, because he's part Mexican, that the rhetoric there is super racist and super ableist. Because as I said, he's neurodivergent and never grew up without any, of course he grew up without any sex education. And some of the shit he said has fucking, shows that he didn't get much, if any. Which, let's be honest, you combine that with people on the autism spectrum usually having problems with boundaries. Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. So one of someone, I don't remember her name anymore, actually posted that there was some stuff that went down between them on Discord, actually. Some was harassing her about shoes, which...
Yeah,
okay. He loves shoes.
Yeah, how about we get to this beforehand? Because I remember so many people were like making fun of him because he has a foot fetish, guys. Apparently, this is where it all started with, which you'll probably get to a little bit more. But guys, there's nothing wrong with having a foot fetish. Like, stop making fun of him for having it. You're a furry. I like legs. There's nothing wrong with it as long as it's consenting adults. How about you go fuck off and let people enjoy whatever you want? Now. What Chugga Conroy did, however, not cool. So, get back to what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so some of this, oh no, this is only like a 3 on the Richter scale. Most of the rest of the stuff is only like a 3 or a 4 on the Richter scale. Because I've gone through a few comment sections, a lot of the people who disbelieve most of the other stuff, there is one person, just her alone, is enough for a total cancellation. Like what he did to Messiah Naylor is enough on its own that he's done. He's done for at least a year to 18 months. And even when he comes, and he's going to have trouble coming back.
Yeah, I remember when...
He's going to have trouble coming from, because the big one is like, they got it there just a little bit. I'm like, oh, it's a bit, it's not cool and a bit weird, but it's like, you're really gonna call it there? And then I was like, I wonder what this saying now. This, and my little reaction was, I read the thread, I'm like, this is a lot worse than I imagined, than I thought.
So, like, what is it? Like, from what I've read up, it's like he was pressuring like this woman or multiple women to like take like pictures of their feet and all that because he has a foot fetish. It's like, is that it, or is there like worse?
Shoes and feet.
What?
Where is it? Shoes and feet.
Yeah.
It's much more a shoe thing than a feet thing. It's nothing. It's way worse.
Like, what did he do that's worse?
Where is it? Where is she? Where is your comments? It was 6 or... It was where she was, it was the, where was it?
Because all I know about really is the foot thing. I don't know anything else.
Oh, wait, where the fuck? Wait.
Did it come?
What the?
Did it?
Oh, hang on. We got a problem here.
Did the comment get
deleted?
deleted?
I'm gonna find it. Wait. Where the hell is it? Where's your...
I guess you're having problems finding whatever this is.
It is. Most of her tweets are gone from the last 4 years. What? Oh, come on. It was the last 2 years. Okay. I'm going to have to explain this from what I remember. Basically, I pretty much summarize it as Tony Conroy doesn't know the meaning of the word boundaries.
Oh no.
Yes, but I was... I can't find it. I can't find the tweets, but yeah, there was persistent harassment from Tony Conroy towards Messiah Naylor. And that contributed to the disintegration of their friendship about 2 years ago. Long story short, Messiah Naylor's allegations alone were enough to completely to that everyone, including Proton John and Nintendo Capri's son, don't want anything to do with him professionally.
Oh boy.
It was set like years of harassment, and it's like, that was when I was like, dude, what the actual fuck? To be clear, like, what the fuck, dude? Seriously. What, oh my god. Oh my fucking god. It's like,
is it like...
Someone needed to give him a sex education about 6 or 7 there, and how to interact with people properly. For about 6 or 7 years ago, he would not be in the situation where he's not going to be able to return for a while. And even if he does, him and his girlfriend, because his girlfriend got her Twitter account doxxed.
Of course.
Yep.
Great.
I don't know how much harassment she's getting. I'm going to say that she's probably getting a shit ton of it.
Of course.
But yes, it's
like, is it like sexual assault or rape level bad?
No, but like it's the sexual harassment allegations, like it'd be more, at least like definitely harassment and abuse are like persistent over years, mainly towards Nella, because he has no concept of the word boundaries. She didn't speak up at the time because of things like power dynamics and that. Because, of course, Chugga's channel was 10 times the size of hers.
Well, like we said before, like when something like this happens, you need to say it regardless and all that. Maybe if you said no to him from the start, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
But, to be clear, remember that Chugga doesn't know the meaning of the word boundaries. And so he's had issues. And so, like...
He's going to have to learn eventually.
Yeah, well, he's going through therapy. He's hopefully getting a comprehensive sex education now. And yeah, John and Tim are going to do their own thing eventually. We'll see. It's going to be a while before he can come back. And I don't think I know it's a lot harder to get popular these days. On YouTube, but yeah, his main channel's now tainted. He's probably going to have to. The harassment of him and his girlfriend is going to ramp up again if he tries to return on that main channel anytime soon.
Yeah, that's pretty unfortunate. You definitely went down a lot for that. Like this really does sound like something we've covered before. Like, you need help, Chugga Conroy. Really do need help. Like I'm gonna say it again.
The good news is he's getting it.
Yeah,
he's getting it.
And like I'm gonna say before, there is nothing wrong with you having a foot fetish. You do you.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. And fuck anyone who makes fun of you. Because I remember people making so much fun of him, like on Twitter and YouTube and all that. Fuck all of you. There's nothing wrong if he likes feet. All right, nothing wrong with that. What he did, however,
what you should be focusing on is what he did to Messiah Nella.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you should be focusing on.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason that he's getting cancelled. And he got cancelled.
Yeah.
In the end.
Absolutely unacceptable. Get help. And like I said before, when something like this happens, you need to report it immediately, regardless of the circumstances. If you report it, maybe he could have gotten help sooner or made the situation not as bad. But it still doesn't.
You could have like told John and Tim. John and Tim combined would have been enough to get him off his ass to do something about it.
Yeah, like it's just
get a whole bit. Well, I'd say John and Tim probably would have been enough. Hell, John might alone, knowing what John's like, he probably would have been enough.
Yeah, like this is just very unfortunate. So hopefully you get help, Chugga Conroy, and fix your situation. And I guess I can only hope you don't get completely canceled for this, but you're not in a good spot in this regard. Like, this is pretty bad. And this has been like a month since. I wonder how many subs he's lost from this.
I'm trying to remember. He was at 1.2.
Because his wiki says...
Only 20,000. Hang on. I'm going to check something.
Because his wiki says he has 1.25 million subscribers at the moment.
I'm taking a look. He is down. He's only down 20k, and that was those 20k lost was around the time it came there. But I'm looking. I see what's tanked though. Though then again, this is kind of because he's not doing a let's play. His viewership has tanked though.
Mm-hmm. Like for me,
like 600. I think the last. I'm trying to find the last one. What's the last one? 209. Last time you were. When was the last time you was that? 209. Wow, I'm going back pretty far.
209,000
in a week. Yeah. Wow, I'm having trouble finding. Yeah, it hasn't gotten that low in the last 2 weeks, last 2 months, last 2 years, 2.5, nearly 3 years. He has never gotten that low in the views. So people who are leaving are people who watch him.
Yeah, like for me, like if I don't upload like videos in a day, like my views for that day go down like a third or more usually and stuff. But yeah, when you haven't posted stuff in a month, I'm not surprised why. Plus, what you did. Yeah. Like we've covered numerous like sexual assault allegations on here. At least he hopefully will get the help he needs to learn consent and all that. And hopefully he'll come back because his content was good. I remember when I first saw him was when he got his channel deleted for stupid copyright claims when he did Pokemon Crystal in 2011, if you remember that. That's how I first heard of it. That was so stupid. And it sounds like you, like Gavin, are a huge fan of him and his stuff.
Yes.
Like, the only thing I really watched was his Pikmin meltdowns and Pokemon. His Pikmin meltdowns are so funny. Watch him suffer through the Wally Wogs like I always would do and such. But yeah, get help, Chugga Conroy, because this is unacceptable and all that. Alright, so I think we've gone through that. So now, I guess on to the next topic. Which is...
Greece legalizing gay marriage.
Let's go! Good news for once! Let's go! Greece legalized gay marriage! The first Orthodox country, too, to do it. Roar! Let's go! And it triggered the Orthodox Church immensely for doing that, and I say, cope, sieve, and mauled. So we gotta see about this awesome news.
It's awesome, you see.
Hell yeah! It's nice to finally cover another country legalized gay marriage because it's been a while since we've done that. And the polls were like 55% support it, so nice to see Greece is pro-gay rights and all that. Can you only imagine how triggered Erdogan must be? So yeah, this is awesome news. Because how many times we gotta explain this to you people? There's nothing wrong with being gay. And if they want to get married, they should be able to. And all that. And of course, Europe is making major progress in all that. It is the most... Actually, no, Finland and Estonia are the most eastern country to legalize it. But hey, first Orthodox country, and that's pretty big because Orthodox Christians are very, very conservative. Ask Russia about that. So, yeah, this is really great news. So what do you have to say about it?
I find it very interesting. Very, very interesting.
And based.
Yes.
It's nice, too, to talk about good things for LGBT, especially since we covered the last few months. So, Russia is pretty much genociding them very soon. Especially in Chechnya. And such. And, of course, what China's been doing, too. And fascist piece of shits in America and all that. So, it's nice to finally have good news for once. And that sucks too because I think the last topic we're going to see the opposite of good news. And it's not... It got me so angry watching that last night. So, hey, at least some good news. Good on you, Greece, for being on the right side of it. Hopefully trigger the Orthodox Church. Hopefully trigger Erdogan. Always facing that regard. Hopefully, that could be a sign for maybe LGBT in Turkey to try and get rid of Erdogan finally once and for all. Because you guys need to get rid of him and become a base progressive country again like you used to be. You need Ataturk back. Alright, so after hopium, after the good news, I think it's on to the next topic, which also, if you pick in the right order, could also be good news.
Trump in a bad election spot.
Remember when we covered last time about when we told conservatives they should dump Trump and support Nikki Haley?
Yep.
Well, Fair and Balanced did a video on that recently, and he talked about the terrible spot Trump's in, as we mentioned before last week on this, because this is really bad spot that they are in. So here we go.
So for months and months and months, we have heard from people on the left, including those challenging President Biden in the Democratic primary, if you can even call it a Democratic primary. I do wish we had a primary. I'm not knocking that at all. We should have had a primary. I think it's unfair to not. But
we
anyway,
do. It's just Democrats refuse to acknowledge
on the
it.
left, including some on the center left, like James Carville, have been telling us for months that President Biden is in so much trouble. He has no path to re-election. He is toast, and Trump is going to be president. Well, according to the polls, that's actually not a thing that at this moment is even capable of happening. I don't know.
I wouldn't say it's incapable of happening, but yeah, we've been on the opposite case of no. We think Trump is more likely to win than most people think. I still think he's likely going to win despite his screw-ups, and it's because Trump's screw-ups are worse.
I paid attention to the recent Quinnipiac poll that came out, but it showed the president...
Just like recently we opened his big fat mouth that forced me, who doesn't like Biden, to vote for him. Like, he's doing the thing that's going to keep him from winning.
Biden now has a very healthy 6-point lead over Donald Trump, a 22-point lead with Donald Trump over women voters, and an 8-point lead over Donald Trump with independent voters. So,
I mean, guys, like the independent voters, an 8-point difference, that's huge. That is huge. Because that's going to probably be the biggest... Well, actually, the only way Biden would lose the election is people like me, well, formerly me, but other people, progressives like me, not voting for him because he sucks. Especially on the, especially allowing the Palestinians to get genocide and all that. Like, that's his main issue right now. And I keep telling people, if he pressures Israel to stop doing what they're doing, that could massively fix his election chances to a point where I think it's almost guaranteed he'd win. But that's what's going to... If he loses, it's going to be because of that. Whereas Trump, if he loses, it's because he sucks and scares people away from him. And, like me, scaring progressives who would not vote for Biden normally, now to vote for him because he opened his big fat mouth.
And, by the way, his approval rating's gone back up. His handling on issues like the economy has gone back up. Immigration is no longer the number one concern of American voters. In fact, the number one concern of American voters in this new poll that has an under 3% margin of error, so it is a good poll, the number one issue is preserving democracy. So.
And gee, who do you think wins on that issue? Who do you think wins on that? I can't figure it out. Do you know?
Yes. No.
Things have changed, and they have changed in a big way. And they have changed in such a way that Donald Trump should be pissing his pants because his poll numbers are not only bad, but they are only projected to get worse. Here's why. Because these polls, even the previous polls that showed that Trump was beating Biden and he's beating him so bad, oh, God, no. And I told you at the time those were BS, and I'm right.
Remember, guys, too, around this time, because I remember doing the video, we remember covering this, why... Because remember, all the polls showed around this time that Trump was beating Biden, remember? And that's why I was telling people, you support Bernie and that's the end of it. And all that. Because did much better. But, of course, Trump screwed up COVID so badly that he helped Biden win.
Those polls, including the new one, also show that if Donald Trump gets a single criminal conviction, if he gets convicted on any count in any trial...
And remember, he has a lot of them, people.
Which we may not have any this year other than the
I've just found out something here.
What?
So apparently Chuck has actually gone overseas with his girlfriend. Like, he's actually left America. We don't know where they're going. And it's going to be a long... And it's going to be months or even a year or more before he comes back.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe we'll discuss that whenever he shows back up again.
But he will lose roughly half of the independent voter support that he currently has.
You hear that, guys? If he gets convicted on any one of the things he's facing, he'll lose. He's on track to lose half of the independent voters that are already voting for him. Again, that is huge. Because if he wants to win, he's going to need every single one of them. Because he's not going to get he's not going to get any Democrats anymore like he did in 2016. He's not going to get the majority of independents anymore because of his actions. Hell, he's not even going to get the majority... not majority. He's not even going to get some percentage of Republicans now because he's gone so far. Like, remember we covered, too, Nikki Haley. Like, if it was like 40% of Nikki Haley voters, if she's not nominated, they're going to go vote for Biden. That's huge. That is undeniably huge. And that's why we've been saying for like over a year now, Trump's actually the worse position than Biden is despite his screw-ups.
In swing states, to the point...
And like, do you see anyone else covering like we are?
Point where Biden's electoral college victory becomes a guarantee. Let me say that again.
I don't know if I'd be that bold,
if Trump
though,
gets
Farron.
a single criminal conviction this year, which the only one we're probably going to have is going to be the Stormy Daniels hush money payment, and I think that's kind of, yeah, he's probably going to get convicted. Maybe it does it, maybe it doesn't. But if he gets that conviction, he will lose half of the support, not from all independent voters in those swing states, but half of the ones who currently say they support him.
That's devastating, people.
Part. He loses half of the support that he already has. That's already not enough to send him back to the White House.
Like, do not understand me saying that's very, very, very bad for Trump if he loses them.
As I see it right now, based on the current, as of today, polling numbers, Trump does not have a path to victory. Now, I had actually mentioned that a couple weeks ago in a segment, and people said, but Farron, you're not counting in what's going to happen with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sucking votes away from Biden. Oh, don't worry, folks. The new poll did that for me, too. Because in a five-way presidential race, when you have Biden, Trump, Kennedy, Cornel West, and even Jill Stein, guess who's still number one?
Candidate?
Biden.
Yep.
So
I don't buy like the arguments of KG's gonna swing anything. No, I don't think he's gonna affect anything. Just like remember in 2016, like all the polls showed like a few months before the election, like, oh, look at Gary Johnson, he's getting like 15% of the in the polls and all that. What do you end up getting? Like barely 3% or something like that. I don't think RFK is gonna make any difference whatsoever. And there have been polls showing recently that he would probably take more from Trump now than Biden. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to hurt him whatsoever. And we already know Jill Stein and Cornell are not going to win. And they didn't bring up the Libertarian candidate, but I'm sure it's going to be a Casey as well.
And when you factor in all of those other candidates, Biden still beats Trump. Now, I'm not saying everything is fine and rosy and Biden's cruising towards an easy election. These polls are going to change. But...
It's gonna be on Biden if he wants to win or not. I keep telling people like in Fosh's comment section because I still get shit from him even though I say I'm voting for him now because they can't accept the fact that it's gonna be on him if he loses. Not like people who don't want to vote for him.
In a way that's not going to benefit Trump. Now Biden's polls may not go up, but if he stays where he is with 50% of the support of all voters right now, he's okay. But Trump's support, even if Biden stays at 50, Trump's will go down. So maybe those third-party candidates eke up a little bit, take up some of the support that's leaving Trump, but it still leaves Biden at the majority. Maybe that's happened. Maybe they go to Biden and his numbers do go up. But Trump's numbers are literally only projected to go down from this point forward as his legal problems get worse and, of course, as he becomes more visible on the campaign trail. Because the more he talks, the less people like him. And I think that's another reason we're seeing such big difference in these current polls out this past week. Trump's more visible. He's doing more rallies. He's doing more interviews. He's more active on Truth Social.
Making a fool of himself recently.
Just on down. Now, I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't talk about the one caveat here. Nikki Haley beats Biden in a head-to-head matchup.
As we covered last time out, as I'm telling all you conservatives, if you want to win, you support Haley because she beats Biden. She's gonna get the people that would not vote for Trump. And I still think a lot of you...
I think there was one where she was thumping Biden by 10 points.
Yeah, like, the reason why people don't support Trump is because he turns people off. He sucked as a president, denied the election loss, January 6th, all that. Haley... It has not been president, and so she hasn't done anything bad yet. She wouldn't deny the results of the election if she lost. She wouldn't cause January 6th if she lost, and all that. And she doesn't scare people off from voting for like Trump does, and all that. For crying out loud. Like, for example, like me, like I'm voting for Biden now because of Trump's big mouth. Like if Trump dropped out, Haley would get in. I might not even be sure if I would even vote for him then anymore because the main issue would be gone because she's not going to drop support for Ukraine or NATO or anything like that. Like, that's how much of a bad candidate Trump is. He scares people away from him. Haley does not. And that's why, if you really want to win, if you want Biden to get out at all costs, you support Haley. That's the end of it. And she's going to do all the stuff that you guys want to see. All you saying like, oh, she's a rhino and all that. She's going to do everything you want. So shut up and just take what you got. Remember, like, the most electable candidate? Bernie was the most electable one in 2020 and 16 too. Haley's the more electable candidate in this election. So if you care about that, you vote for her and you shut the fuck up.
That's pretty significant. Nikki Haley, who is not going to beat Trump in the primary, actually could beat Biden if she became the nominee.
She's basically Bernie in this result, guys. Like, if you have Trump, you're likely to lose. If you have Haley, you're very likely to win. Like, it's pretty obvious.
So that's significant, and that is a source of concern for Biden. So where is that coming from? Well, that is coming from the women voters. Women voters aren't necessarily excited about the idea of Biden, but they do
Same
vote
for me.
him against Trump because, let's face it, Trump's pretty bad with women. But when you put up a moderate Republican like Nikki Haley,
Not a
of course,
moderate
I used the
whatsoever.
word moderate in quotation marks there, because there's nothing moderate about her. The women actually break for Haley at that point. So Donald Trump...
How could anyone even vote for Haley at all, for crying out loud? Especially women. Like, she doesn't even support, like, abortion rights, for crying out loud. That's something that you women claim to care about. Like, you don't vote for her ever, for crying out loud.
Is put in a position.
Unless you're those Trump supporting women we saw earlier in the episode that you don't value abortion that much and Trump is too disgusting for you to even think about running, whereas Haley doesn't disgust you, I guess. But to me, it's still stupid.
Where he has to choose a vice presidential candidate that can play to his weakness, which is women voters. Nikki Haley is obviously the person that does that, but his allies like Steve Bannon and other MAGA freaks have already told him, if you pick Nikki Haley, there's going to be a revolt.
I don't believe that. He's in power, so they're going to shut up and just take it. If Trump did get the nomination, that would probably be the smartest thing if he made Haley be his VP. Maybe that could help him a little bit. Maybe people are like, oh, maybe she'll straighten him out a little bit. I doubt it would. I still think Trump would still lose in that regard, but maybe he would do a little bit better if he picked Haley. I don't think it would have, like, I don't buy the argument, I remember, like, oh my god, remember all the stupid idiot, neo-lib Democrats that said, like, oh, if Hillary or Biden picked Bernie as their VP, they would have done worse. No, they would have done better.
No, they would have done better. They would have done better, you dinos.
Hell, I think Hillary might have outright won if Bernie was her VP. Hell, I might have voted for her then, in that regard. I probably would have voted for Biden if Bernie was his VP too, because we know Bernie is going to make them do stuff.
Do you know who part of me suspects for if he could run, it could have run again?
Who?
Part of me suspects Obama might have picked Bernie.
Because Biden was his VP, so I don't know. I'm not.
I know, like I said, we've already. Look, I maintain that Obama would have beaten Trump if he was allowed to run for a third term.
Same here, and all that. But yeah, guys, like, you're gonna get your policies no matter what. So why not make yourself more easier to win? So
exactly,
like I said, Haley should be the Republican nominee because you're more likely to win. The next best thing is, I guess, have her be Trump's VP, since he's going to be a woke skull, because remember, he wants to have a woman as his vice president. Identity politics much, guys? But I mean, to be fair, you might have a better chance to win if she is your VP, but I still think you'd lose. But hey, if it makes your chance increase, you just do it.
So Trump has now been put in a position where he could hypothetically beat Biden.
We're starting to get some more that are showing Biden getting up over Trump.
Yeah, like, that's what happened last time. Like, I remember doing the videos, like, in March when Bernie dropped out, that, like, Trump was beating Biden in the polls, but then later on when COVID all that happened, then Biden was obliterating them.
Yeah.
And like we've been saying for, like, the last year, like, oh, look how bad the polls are showing. Guys, the polls for, like, Obama in, like, 2011 he was bad against, like, all the Republican candidates, and he still freaking won because it's too early. Wait till you get
to turn around.
Yeah, wait till we get closer to the election, and then maybe we'll see what the polls say. But right now, it's too early to
I'm
say.
looking right now. One university study's got Biden up against Haley, but then there's others that have Haley up anywhere from 3 to 18 points.
And 3%, that's within the margin of error. So the fact that her worst results is within the margin of error, that's pretty terrifying. Like, even Bernie's worst results against Trump was like 6. He was well out of margin of error at that point.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing political suicide if you don't support Haley as the nominee.
If he picks a moderate...
But hey, I mean, it's against my best interest to tell you all to vote for Haley because that would mean that she would win, which I don't want. But I'm telling you all, you're going to have a better chance to win. Whereas if you want Trump, if you run with Trump, hey, be my guest and be more likely to lose. That's good for me, and I can watch all of you cope, seethe, and maul, and laugh at you in November like I did in 2020 because that was a fun time.
Yes, that it was.
Republican as his running mate. But the idiots, the brain-dead MAGA freaks out here are saying, if you pick a moderate, we're not going to vote for you. So...
I mean, guys, they hate freaking Mike Pence, and he is pretty much like what they want. He's a religious fundamentalist and all that, and they wanted to hang him on January 6th. Like, there's nothing...
Yep,
I honestly don't think there's any candidate whatsoever that can please them. I really don't think there's anything that would work to please these idiots. So at that point, you say, fuck off. We're going to pick this, and you're going to vote for me no matter what, because then, hey, lesser evil vote. If you don't vote for me, you're going to help Biden win, and do you want Biden to win?
He could gain support among independents by picking a moderate, but then he loses MAGA support, allegedly based on what they're saying now.
Yeah, I don't believe that, though. I don't think he would lose at all.
I'll say it again. As it stands right now, there is no realistic path forward for Donald Trump to win in 2024.
I mean, there could be. Biden fucks up so badly that he scares people away, like the Hamas-Israeli war and all that. So, I mean, it is possible for him to lose, but I don't think it's going to happen still for like a year now.
Keep in mind that I said, as it
can happen,
right
guys.
Now, polls will change. But if this data is any indicator, the only likely way it's going to change is that Trump's support is going to continue falling. Hi, everyone.
So, yeah, we had to say about that. Interesting video.
Yeah. Well, it is.
Yeah, I think that's the first time we've covered Farron and all that. So, what do you guys say about that? Trump in his bad spot.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. It's pretty very interesting.
So, yeah, guys.
It's one of those things where the numbers are starting to switch around again.
Yeah, it's too early to say. But like I said, if you guys stick with Trump, you're more likely to lose. But if you want to win, you support Haley. And that's the end of it. All right, so I think we've covered that. So now, what's next?
That'll be the second last topic on this one. And that will be... Good news on climate change?
Yeah. You remember Simon Clark?
Yes.
We've covered him before. We covered him like a few weeks ago when he did his review on 2023 on climate change. He did a video recently I saw, and he said, and the title was, "Is there any good news about climate change?" And he did some optimistic things that we can't deny, even though it still isn't enough. But, like, it's something that we should watch because it's very, 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 very important. So, let's see.
Yep.
Thanks to Nebula for sponsoring this video. Yes, we are constantly bombarded with bad news about the climate crisis, and that's because it's a very serious issue. The stakes are high. You probably shouldn't be eating those, by the way. It's already affecting people, and the price of not solving this problem is vast, or is too large to imagine. But amidst all of the terrible headlines, there is good news out there, and I don't think people talk about it often enough. So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. To be clear, I'm not talking about the unexpected upsides of a warmer climate, like summers being warmer, or there being more CO2 for our...
Those are all stupid conservative arguments we heard for years.
I'm talking about how much progress we have made towards fighting the climate crisis, and how the future is looking brighter than it did a decade ago. Prior to the Paris Agreement in 2016, this is how much warming scientists expected the Earth to experience by 2100. 4 degrees Celsius.
So yeah, here you guys, in 2016, scientists thought the globe was going to warm by 4 degrees by 2100, which is, like, very... unbelievably bad. That's like hell.
And to be clear,
Yeah.
that would have been a total...
And remember that keeps piling up year after year. They'll keep piling up for like a millennium. And remember that if the Earth gets to 47 degrees average surface temperature, that's it. That's basically, at that point, that's a moist greenhouse.
Well, thankfully, we're at 15 to 16 degrees right now, so we're far away from that.
16.5.
Yeah.
A certain collapse of global civilization.
Because yes, 2023 Earth was 1.5 degrees warmer. Which, by the way, that's remember that? We hit that this year for the first time. We want to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees by the end of the century.
Yeah.
2023, we hit it for the first time.
Yeah, we're going to be covering he'll be covering a little bit.
Now, however, current government policy that's actually in effect is expected to limit that warming to 2.7 degrees by 2100.
So now, of course, with the policies we've enacted, now the warming, instead of being 4 degrees, it's 2.7, which that's still hell. That's still very, 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 very bad. And I mean very, very, very bad, people. Do not underestimate that. But that's still better than the 4 degrees it was predicted beforehand. That's like a third off already. No, that's more than a third off. That's a major increase benefit.
2030 targets that are a little bit beyond what we currently have in policy are expected to limit it to 2.5 degrees Celsius.
That's about right. So,
and then it goes on, going by 2030 targets only, it would limit to 2.5 degrees, which again, that's like 6 years away. That's still better than it was before, even though it's still very, very bad.
And long-term targets that aren't anywhere near policy just yet are expected to limit the warming to 2.1 degrees.
And then, of course, after these policies were done, by 2100, we could potentially have it only down to 2.1 degrees, which again, still very bad, but that's still yeah, it's almost half off what originally was thought to be back in 2016 before we did the Paris Climate Agreement. That's almost half off already.
All of this, by the way, is courtesy of Climate Action Tracker. Definitely check out their website. Now, you've probably heard that we want to limit global warming this century to less than 2 degrees Celsius. Ideally, less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. So this 2.1 degree number, well, it's not good enough. But two things. Firstly, consider just how much we've already brought that number down.
Remember, yeah, already half in just like 8 years of projection.
So in less than 10.
Like to all you like doomers on like climate change and all that, you can't ever give up. You have to fight no matter what. Like you can't deny this is undeniably good. We've already cut it in half in just 8 years. Who knows? Maybe in 8 years we can potentially get even under 2 degrees. Although we're running out of time on that. But
we're very much running.
Yeah, but like we could potentially do that.
10 years. And while that number isn't low enough yet, we shouldn't lose sight of just how much we've accomplished so far. And secondly, this number is only based on submitted long-term targets. In other words, this isn't as good as it gets. There's still plenty of scope this century to bring the number down further, to less than 2 degrees. Though achieving any target is another matter. And if we're optimistic and assume that all long-term net zero targets are met, then that number goes down to 1.8 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, we can get down to 1.8, which again is very bad, but like it said, remember, at the most, 2 degrees is the most we want to try and avoid. This would be under 2 degrees. Like this, this is like the extremely optimistic one, which probably won't happen. But hey, it's still better. It's over half of off now what originally was supposed to be. Yeah. This would now be within. This would be in like the barely tolerable range now.
As I say, that is optimistic.
It will also mean that, at least in my home country, that we at least lose the Great Barrier Reef.
Which is very unfortunate.
That's dead. The Great Barrier Reef's gonna die is probably gonna die before 2050.
Which is very unfortunate.
Far too soon to say.
We've already lost about 30% of it. It's already reached to the point it cannot recover, and the rest is probably going to go in the next 30 years.
Stay on target.
But the early signs indicate maybe we will. And I say that because the world has demonstrated
whether
we will hit those long-term targets or not.
Stay on target.
But the early signs indicate maybe we will. And I say that because the world has demonstrated we can decouple economic growth from emissions. The average person today is wealthier than the average person 10 years ago, and yet does not emit more carbon dioxide. In Europe specifically...
Let me remind us a bit. So this is by world. Yeah, according to this graph, because of like the drop from COVID a few years ago, even when it went back up after COVID recovered, people are still emitting less CO2 than they did pre-COVID. In fact, it looks like it might be potentially half off what it originally was in that regard on the graph. And it's stable too, it's not going up.
I think part of it's also that it's actually come at least China's greenhouse gas emissions have actually come down a little. But they're not actually...
He's going to get to that in a little bit as well.
Back to pre-COVID levels.
And even at this graph's peak, which was like right into the early 2010s, we're nowhere near that mark anymore. We've gone down since like early 2010s. So that's a good sign in that regard. This is world.
Carbon dioxide.
Now here's Europe.
Specifically, the emissions per person have fallen dramatically.
According to this graph, Europeans are producing 30% more than 30% less CO2 than they did back in the 70s, and that's a huge thing. Like that's one interesting thing too about Europe. They don't produce as much CO2 compared to like their development, unlike America and China somewhat. So that's pretty damn good. Europe's very successfully like lowered CO2 emissions. Even America to a smaller extent and all that.
Europe specifically.
Of course, Australia's not doing well, as we always do. We always don't. I mean, it's actually very state dependent because South Australia is actually doing a pretty good job. While other states are actually increasing their emissions.
You're conservatives. Thank you very much.
Emissions per person.
Well, even the lefty states like Victoria are still not doing as well as South Australia. By the way, our battery was brought in by a Liberal government. I should mention at this point that our Liberal government, at least at the time, and still is at least to a largely
Labour, you mean?
More like the corporate Democrats than fascist Nazi Republicans.
Yep, because I've known about this even before I knew about you. Like that's how bad it is.
As they have in the United States.
Oh, here we go. Now here's America. So according to this, CO2 emissions is 20% less than it was in the 70s. So yeah, even America, who's terrible on this, has made progress still.
And yet both of those economies have...
But of course, the main thing is China, because they're the biggest emitter of CO2.
And India.
Yeah, they're getting up there too. But he will cover China, I think, in a little bit.
Continued to grow. And no, that's not because they outsource their emissions.
As I said before, I remember that China's emissions have peaked, and so it hasn't gone down much. It is starting to come down.
Yeah, because I think he covers it.
Like China, you can account for that. This is genuine decoupling, and it's a huge deal. Because, for the time being at least, we live in a world governed by capitalism, and so the most important thing to governments is increasing individual economic prosperity. What's been demonstrated recently is that they can do this without wrecking the planet. And in fact, in many cases, doing so the low-carbon way is now the cheaper way of doing it. But you might say, that's all fine for Europe. What about China, the world's largest emitter? Their carbon emissions are still going up. Are they even, though?
Analysis indicates that China's emissions probably peaked last year and will systematically fall going forwards.
And according to this graph, 3 of the last 4 years, China has emitted less CO2 than it did before. So yeah, looks like China might be finally starting to go down, which is huge since they are the biggest emitter. Like guys, China the biggest emitter, now they're starting to go down. America is the second biggest emitter. They've honestly been going down for like, I think almost like 10 straight years now. And of course Europe's been going down even longer even beforehand. Like the biggest emitters of like CO2, and they're starting to go down. That is progress.
That's in part because China has rolled out a truly breathtaking amount of renewables. Did you know that last year China added more solar capacity than the United States has in its entire history? Solar and wind capacity in China will overtake coal capacity this year. Globally,
why'd you have to let
will
them
have the
beat
largest
us?
Installed capacity of any way we generate electricity sometime next year, and in less than 5 years, renewables will account for 42% of global electricity generation. The installation of renewables worldwide is happening so much faster than most people realize. The International Energy Agency reckons we may very well hit the ambitious goal of tripling renewables capacity by 2030.
Imagine that, guys. Electricity being produced by clean energy 3 times more likely in just 6 years. The capacity. That is insane.
I see this as an absolute win.
But to be clear, while we are really successfully decarbonising how we generate electricity, electricity is only part of how society uses energy. It's actually about 20%. So progress here is going really well, progress here, not so much. Heating, transport, various other smaller sectors, these are all still vastly dependent on fossil fuels. And in fact, the overall share of energy that comes from fossil fuels hasn't changed all of that much over the past couple of decades. Decarbonising this bit, that is the mountain we still have to climb. But here's the thing, with cheaper renewable electricity, it's now becoming increasingly viable to electrify some of those sectors. See heat pumps or electric cars.
We covered heat pumps before, people, remember. Very important.
Yes, before you comment, better options are...
And I like in the background, he has Open TDD playing Let's Go, one of my childhood games.
These can be electrified too. I did a whole video about transport. But there are still several sectors that have been historically labelled hard to decarbonise, such as cement and steel. You can't really electrify those, and their current manufacturing
airline
techniques
travel
inherently produce CO2. But solutions have now been found to those hard to decarbonise sectors. I previously made a whole video that was an in-depth look at one possible solution to decarbonising cement production.
We need to eventually watch that then, because cement is a bigger contributor to CO2, and for what we know of, there really is nothing we can do about it. But maybe this video will give us a possibility that maybe we could decarbonize that. That'll be very interesting. I gotta look that up.
That we can decarbonize steel production through the use
and same goes for making steel. That's something else we couldn't do, but maybe we can now.
Possible challenges to overcome now have practical solutions, and that's kind of true across the board. Those solutions now just need effective support from government policy to be rolled out at scale. And on that note, more voters than ever care about the climate crisis. And in fact, most people in the 20 most polluting nations on Earth support policy on climate change. And
I mean, that's been the case for like decades, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to change in that regard.
Such policy. So as more members of Gen Z become eligible to vote, we're going to see a continuation of the current trend for more and more ambitious policy.
That's of course if they vote though, remember. Because young people are less likely to vote.
But not taking action on climate is only going to cost them votes. Your local mileage may vary, which raises the hope that our current government here in the UK of cartoonishly incompetent ghouls willing to sell future generations down the polluted river for short-term profit may not be in power that much longer. I think that was impartial enough.
Now, I'm sure that there are several people out there who have watched the video to this point and have laughed at what I have called good news, saying that it's just not good enough. And
well, it isn't.
Yeah, the action that we have taken today on climate is not enough.
But there is no contradiction between acknowledging the severity of the situation we are in and the insufficiency of action to date, and acknowledging the progress made to date towards sufficient action. I don't want you to leave this video thinking that we have solved the climate crisis, because we haven't. We are nowhere near minimizing the threat we face in 2100.
But to say that
well, let me go back to this. So yeah, so this is from December 2023. Warmer projected by 2100. Policy and action would be 2.5. 2030 targets only 2.5. Pledge and target's 2.1. Optimistic scenario would be 1.8, and right now it's the best case is 1.5, which of course we just hit.
Minimizing the threat we face in 2100. But to say that there is no good news about the climate crisis is simply not true. The recent past has shown us that activism, political pressure, and lifestyle changes have worked. And to ignore that fact only invites despair. And despair is not a useful emotion. Despair only limits future action, which we know will make a difference. We need to keep going until our response is sufficient. So no giving up.
We'll keep the same forever.
We cannot solve a crisis that we do not understand, but fortunately there are some excellent climate journalists and authors and indeed video creators covering this crisis. Finding these creators can be difficult, however, with the YouTube algorithm often serving you the video equivalent of fast food. Fortunately though, a curated list of climate creators, including Climate Town, Our Changing Climate, and myself, are all on a platform that prioritizes the viewer experience. So that means carefully selected creators, no advertising, and high quality, independently produced, exclusive content. It's called Nebula, and I partly own it. Nebula was created by a roster of educational creators as an alternative to YouTube, a place where we didn't
Yeah, it looks like the rest of the video is just promoting Nebula. So yeah, we gotta see about that. Perhaps some good news on climate change?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Hopefully that hopefully things do work out better than the way they're headed.
Yeah, we've made a lot of progress, cutting it by almost half already. And if we get the best cases, we can cut the CO2 projected emissions by over half, although it'd still be over 1.5, which is very, 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 very bad. But, like, unfortunately, we can't make instant changes and all that. It has to be gradual, and we're making progress. The next goal is, since, like, China is finally starting to lower CO2 emissions, now we gotta make it where it goes down even faster and all that. And America, too, and the rest of the world. And maybe we'll be in a lot better place. But never give up. Always fight no matter what, because climate change is not going to be like, oh, you're struggling, oh, well, we'll stop it. Nope, we got to keep going no matter what. Just like we have to keep trying to get progressives in power no matter what.
Yep.
All right, so that was good and all, and now on to the next topic.
Last one. Libs of TikTok going full Karen.
Remember the good news earlier about when Greece legalized gay marriage? Now we're going to have to be miserable on this issue because of this stupid cunt. Chaya Rychek. Oh my god. I remember before, like a few years ago, people were like, we should ban her and all that because she's such a vile cunt. I was like, that seems too far for a free speech absolutist like me. But then when I found out what's happened after, and of course what happened in this video, yeah, that's making like, yeah, you probably should be banned because, like, what happened here because of you is just so unacceptable and all that. So, let's see. Oh, that's right. She's having a meltdown and going to try and sue people because they blame her for everything. Fucking cunt.
Chaya Rychek of Libs of TikTok is the queen of defamation who routinely doxes and slanders LGBTQ plus people and their allies, all for views, clicks, and clout on the internet. But now she's mad, and ironically, she's threatening other people with defamation lawsuits because they're daring to point out that her rhetoric sometimes leads to violence against LGBTQ plus people. They're daring to point out that what she's doing is fostering a climate of hate and bigotry towards queer people that sometimes manifests in violence, and as a result, she's trying to silence them by threatening them with defamation lawsuits. Now, said violence materializes in a variety of ways. For example, when she falsely accuses pediatric hospitals of doing sex change surgeries on minors, or claims that schools are grooming kids by distributing LGBTQ plus books to them. Well,
sounds
her
like some Matt
followers
Walsh
sometimes
stuff
get
too.
so worked up that they end up harassing or even making bomb threats to whoever's in her crosshairs, 21 and counting so far, according to a report by NBC News. But now people are pointing the finger at Chaya Rychek once again because the anti-LGBTQ plus environment that she helped to cultivate at a particular school in Oklahoma led to bullying and ultimately ended in the death of a non-binary teenager named Nex Benedict after they were beaten by 3 girls in a school bathroom. But before it got to that point, they were bullied. relentlessly, and The Independent reports the bullying had started in earnest at the beginning of the 2023 school year, a few months after Oklahoma's Governor Kevin Stitt signed a bill that required public school students to use bathrooms that matched the sex listed on their birth certificates. A few weeks ago, on the 7th of February, the bullying allegedly erupted in violence when Nex suffered severe head injuries during a physical altercation at Owasso High School, according to the Owasso Police Department. Now, during the physical altercation, Nex was badly beaten and bruised, and at one point they hit their head on the ground when they were knocked over, and the school called their mom but didn't call an ambulance, which is mind-boggling to me. And their mom ended up taking them to the hospital later on for treatment. They were subsequently dismissed in the evening, and the next day, well, they weren't actually better. They collapsed, and by the time EMTs arrived, they had already stopped breathing and died shortly after. A 16-year-old child died. They lost their life in a likely hate crime that occurred at a place where they were supposed to be safe at school. But in Oklahoma, the bathroom usage of trans children is policed thanks to a law signed by
because someone goes to the bathroom, they're beaten to death.
And often does lead to bullying when students suddenly are using different bathrooms than the ones that they were using. And furthermore, here's where Chaya Raichik comes into play. The Independent continues. An Owasso High School teacher who Nex had greatly admired resigned in 2022 after they were featured in one of Miss Raichik's posts. Quote, Nex was very angry about it, Miss Benedict said. Miss Benedict said that teachers who encourage debate about gender issues were not promoting sexualized content. Quote, they're allowing the students to be who they are. Now, what exactly did that teacher do that was so bad, you ask? Well, in a now deleted tweet, Libs of TikTok shared a video of him telling LGBTQ plus youth, quote, if your parents don't accept you for who you are, fuck them. I'm your parents now. In a small town, that led to controversy, and that teacher resigned. Let me just say this. The fact that that teacher resigned is absurd, because that is what adults should be doing, affirming the identities of LGBTQ plus.
Guys, teachers are usually the first people that kids would go to, like, if a bad situation in their family, or like friends or other family members. It's vital that the teacher accepts them for who they are and stuff like this, since they can't really talk about this issue at home because their parents will beat them or ban them. They can't probably talk with other family members because they're probably the same way. They probably don't feel necessarily comfortable talking with friends, especially if they're kids. They're probably not going to be able to do anything or understand the issue. The next best thing is teachers who could understand this better. And of course, since there was a base teacher, they resigned because of it.
Pathetic. Can be life-saving. Where youth, especially trans youth, are disproportionately at risk for suicidal ideation, so to have someone there
because
to accept them and affirm their identity is really important. But queer students lost an ally at that school who dared to defend them. Next, lost someone who they cared about, who cared about them, who could be there for them as a mentor. Now, I haven't seen anyone blame Chaya Raichik directly for Nex's death, but people have said that adults politicizing trans issues and policing every aspect of their existence is going to have a ripple effect, right? When politicians and parents demonize trans people, their kids hear that and adopt the same hatred towards their peers who happen to be trans or non-binary, which then results in bullying. And after Chaya Raichik harassed Nex's teacher into resigning, Oklahoma School Superintendent Ryan Walter appointed her to the Oklahoma Department of Education's Library Media Advisory Committee, meaning that this person who doesn't even live in that state with no children is going to be able to police content for students in Oklahoma schools. And here he is with the picture of her tweeting on February 6th, making schools safe, i.e. purging schools of LGBTQ plus affirming material and adults.
Because I'm a transphobic cunt.
We learned how safe the schools are being made in Oklahoma, especially if you're a non-binary student.
Damn, so all the isms. Oh boy.
Who made a name for herself on the internet by smearing and doxing innocent queer people and their allies, is appointed to a position of power over students in Oklahoma schools, it's not unreasonable to ask whether or not the adults here share some culpability. Not just Chaya Raichik, but everyone here. The politicians, the people at the school. I mean, this was a failure. They failed Nex. Maybe Nex was bullied by students that were taught trans people aren't people, because that's what they hear all the fucking time. I mean, if the school didn't even have the courtesy to call an ambulance, I have to assume that this speaks to their general lack of regard for trans students overall. In fact, one TikToker, I think, put it best.
Far-right Republican rhetoric contributed to the beating death of a 16-year-old student in
Fucking
Oklahoma.
horrible.
Just a few weeks ago, Ryan Waters, the superintendent of schools in Oklahoma, added the creator of Libs of TikTok to the school library board. And it was too much even for the people of Oklahoma. There was no benefit to putting a woman from California who has no children in the Oklahoma school system on the school board when the entire ethos of her social media account is to attack, dehumanize, criticize, and dox queer people. And that hateful rhetoric and dehumanizing of queer people, coupled with the broad attacks on trans children, resulted in the death of a child.
That's exactly right. This outcome was inevitable, given how hyperbolic and vitriolic and outrageous the rhetoric about trans people has become in this country. Not just in Oklahoma, all around the country. But that mild criticism there from that one TikTok creator was, I guess, too much for Shia Reichik, because she is now threatening to sue her for saying what I think everyone sees as obvious. She writes, here's an account with 3 million followers just casually blaming a teen's death on me. She says I contributed to the death and my rhetoric resulted in the death.
Fuck
Defamation
off,
doesn't
Karen.
even begin to cover what this is. This is a straight up libel. I will not tolerate this, and indicates that she's planning to sue. Now, it's incredible that Chaya Reichik, of all people, would cry
that
about
was some
defamation
Karen level
for the fact
energy I
that
saw
that is
right
her
there.
favorite thing in the world to do. She defames people all the time. She defamed Nex's teacher and accused him of grooming, all because he said he would accept queer students rejected by their parents.
Oh,
she
so
loves
horrible,
defamation,
don't you
but all of
know?
a sudden, she thinks defamation is bad. But
He
here's the
thinks
thing.
he thinks
This isn't
trans people are
defamation. She's not being
people that
defamed
deserve
here.
respect.
But the goal
Deserve
here
him.
in threatening to sue
That's
people who are
defamation,
criticizing her
according to
is to
her.
intimidate them
The
into
existence
silence,
of trans
bully them
people is
into shutting up.
defamation, according
And
to
that's
her.
not me saying
Because
this, even
she's
though
evil
that's
and
generally what
satanic.
cowards tend to do. She basically admitted that this was the goal. She knows that she doesn't have a case, but she just wants them to stop criticizing her.
I'm discussing it with the legal team. Like, it's not off the table, and I mean, it's also like there's another aspect of, like, you know, even if you can't win the defamation case, or like there's a very likely chance you won't win, like sometimes it still might be worth it to take action just so that they stop this behavior.
And that, my friends, is what we call a slap suit. And thankfully, many states now have protections against these kinds of lawsuits, so people who frivolously sue critics don't only get their cases dismissed, but they're also on the hook for legal fees as well if it's determined that the lawsuit they brought forward was indeed a slap suit. This would be the case with these threats that she's doing right now. So it's a dangerous game to play, honestly, if you're Chaya Reichik, especially for the fact that queer people she defamed could actually have legitimate defamation cases against her. So you would think that she'd want to save her money for those cases in the event, you know, one of the people she defamed chooses to sue her. But I mean, if you want to pay the legal fees of people who you're planning to sue, go ahead, do it. Because you're going to be the one who loses. But I mean, this is what she tends to do. She weaponizes her large platform against innocent people and directs hate and incites harassment against them. And if that doesn't sufficiently get them to back down or shut up, she then threatens to sue. For example, journalist Emily Liebert of The Cut reached out to Reichik for a request for comment about an article that she's writing about next. And this is what Reichik did. She tagged her and accused her of doing a hit piece, all because she's reaching out for a request for comment. Beyond the pale.
Oh,
I mean, if she didn't feel responsible in any way whatsoever, why wouldn't she respond? Why not defend herself and answer the questions of these journalists? Why not, at a minimum, offer condolences to Nex's family to show that you're not a complete monster? Well, it's because Chaya Reichik is a monster. She's an immoral person who's opportunistic.
To sue people who disagree with her.
Doesn't care about the people that she hurts. But I want to take a moment to talk specifically about Nex, because they seemed like a really great kid, and it's so sad that we no longer have them in this world. The Independent reports that they were a straight A student with a cat named Zeus, and they were really into video games, specifically Ark and Minecraft. And their life was made a living hell, all because of who they were, because they were non-binary. The school failed them.
Nothing wrong with being non-binary.
And other queer, trans, and non-binary students probably see stories like this and feel helpless. And I understand why you feel this way. But there's a really important message that I want to share with you from the TikToker who Reichik is threatening to sue. And I'm going to leave you with what she has to say, because what she says now is really important.
And if you're a kid out there right now who identifies as non-binary and you're seeing this kind of stuff and it's making you feel very hopeless, just know that there are people out here who are fighting for you, who are fighting to make sure that this never happens again. You will get to grow up, you will get to be who you want to be, and we will not let them take that away from you. So stay with me.
Fight hard like Greece did recently. Never give up, people. So yeah, what do you guys say about this? Libs of TikTok
Horrible
being a
story.
fucking dumb baby Karen and a disgusting cunt and everything. And yeah, maybe you should get banned from social media if you're gonna cause violence towards people. Stupid cunt.
Exactly.
Oh my god. So yeah, there's nothing wrong. Oh my god, how many times I gotta say this? Oh my god, I'm probably gonna say it forever. There's nothing wrong with being LGBT. There's nothing wrong with being LGBT. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm getting tired of having to keep saying this, but you fascist, transphobic pricks won't ever just accept it and leave people alone. There's nothing wrong with being LGBT, so shut up and go away. Because the only thing you're doing is leading people to die. Like what happened here. Absolutely unfortunate. Very unfortunate what happened to this person. Absolutely.
Yeah, horrible.
Alright. So it sucks I had to end on such a on a sad note and all that. But yeah, guys, that is all for this episode. So see you all see you all next time for episode 97.
Yep. See you then.